Hello, I'm Charles Cunningham, teacher of Transcendental Meditation in Twickenham, West London. I hope in the next 45 minutes or so to give you a little introduction to Transcendental Meditation and perhaps answer some of the most common questions. I'd like to cover what is Transcendental Meditation? How does it work? How do you learn? What do you do when you do meditation? And is there a bigger picture? Where does it come from? Where can it possibly lead us to? So to begin, the first thing I always say about Transcendental Meditation, hand on heart, is it's the easiest thing you will ever do in your life. If it isn't at any time, come back and we'll fix it, because it should be, and it could be, it can be the easiest thing. Ease itself. Young children do this without any difficulty. In all likelihood, on your first occasion, you'll be doing it successfully. How could that be true? Simply because it is completely natural. It doesn't involve any mind control, any trying to be in the current moment, trying to empty your mind, trying to concentrate on your breath or an affirmation, visualization, or anything else. Transcendental meditation effectively simply enables a built-in physiological response to take place, of which we are ordinarily deprived. Yeah? So you don't have to learn a skill. It's a built-in ability. It's just a matter of enabling it to take place. And what is this physiological response? It provides a very special quality of rest, different from other forms of rest, different from ordinary relaxation, from other forms of meditation, actually. We'll look at that more in a minute. Very different from sleep. If we were just to sit here for 10 minutes and do nothing and just daydream, relax, and somebody came and tested our reaction time afterwards, we would be slower, naturally enough perhaps, because everything had simply quietened down. After transcendental meditation, our reaction time is actually faster. During sleep, the stress hormone cortisol comes down about 15%. In transcendental meditation, when you've been doing it a few months, it comes down on average 40%, whether you know that's happening or not. Now, let me share with you a little bit more about the facts behind transcendental meditation. To do this, I'm going to share my screen. So here we go. This is just a picture of myself and my wife Janice. We celebrated our 30th anniversary of being transcendental meditation teachers 2 years ago in February. Now, what does science say about transcendental meditation? Hundreds of studies have been published in top journals over the last 60 years, showing all manner of benefits for mind, for body and health, for your emotional well-being, relationships, and indeed for society. Now, some of these might mean more to you than others. Increased creativity, for example. Reduced aging, perhaps. Recovery from post-traumatic stress. Reduced alcohol use. Reduced conflict in your community, perhaps. We could spend a whole evening talking about any one of these benefits and the research behind it. If you want to know more, I suggest you go to YouTube and do a few searches, and you'll find videos on transcendental meditation and ADHD, TM and bipolar, and any number of things. Just search and you'll find it. We also have an up-to-date research review from a British GP, which we can share with you if you wish. Now, TM is being used around the world in many different settings. It's being used in prisons in many countries. It is being used, including the United Kingdom. It's being used with refugees in Africa and the Middle East. It's being used in schools around the world, in Africa, in South America, in New Zealand, in India, and in, I think this is Australia, and this is in the UK, in Lancashire, a top performing free school. It's also being used in the military and the police. This is in Ecuador, where they have a whole battalion doing transcendental meditation daily. But it's not just that. The top military training academy in the United States, called Norfolk, uses transcendental meditation as part of their military training. The Canadian police are using transcendental meditation. Now, for what it's worth, who does TM that we might know? Front and central, I don't know if you know David Lynch, a very great filmmaker, award-winning, and he, through his philanthropic trust, has brought transcendental meditation to well over 2 million people around the world, disadvantaged groups in North America, South America, Africa, the Middle East, in the East, and all sorts of places. Ray Dalio, famous financier, his whole company of about 200 do transcendental meditation, and his corporate culture has been written about and emulated widely. Katy Perry says that she would just be an emotional wreck if it was not for transcendental meditation, depressed, fearful, and so on. Hugh Jackman, a lovely family man, says transcendental meditation reminds him of what's really important in life. And Oprah Winfrey had all her staff learn and do it in company time, and she said it transformed their working relationships. However, what would you experience if you were to learn transcendental meditation this weekend, for example? Well, I conducted a survey of everyone learning with me over a period of 18 months at one time, and I looked at their experience reports after just 4 days. And hazard a guess, if you would. What would be the most commonly reported benefit in the first 4 days? You got it. Most people guess this right off. Better sleep. Some people even say they've had the best night's sleep in a very, very long time. It's not guaranteed, but it is very common. A feeling of calm and inner quiet after the morning meditation lasting through the day was the second most commonly reported. Greater energy, particularly mental energy. Being more positive, getting less stressed out when things go wrong. And finally, being much more productive, getting things done easily, things just doing themselves. A number of examples came through of just that. However, you'll see here that 50% of people were reporting one or more of the following. When I learned transcendental meditation, I was actually in the other 50%. My friends said that I had got better, that I was more normal now, and easier to get on with. But as far as I was concerned, I couldn't feel myself changing. I couldn't feel TM doing anything to me. So I wouldn't have admitted to anything like this. And for that reason, and because we're all different, I always recommend that We look upon transcendental meditation as a long-term strategy. It's part of your daily routine. Morning and evening, we do transcendental meditation, just sitting, I hope, as we are at the moment, just comfortably in a seat with the eyes closed for a period of 20 minutes twice a day, perhaps before breakfast and before dinner, but whatever works for you. And just done as part of our daily routine, the significant physiological changes that take place when done regularly become deeper. They become entrained with the body rhythms, bring greatest benefit. In my experience of teaching for over 30 years, the most reliable benefit of all, almost you can guarantee it, is the reduction of anxiety. Now, this is just one study. This is actually the latest study that's in progress at the moment in Miami in 3 hospitals. And it shows that after just 1 month, people practicing transcendental meditation had reduced their anxiety levels over 60% compared with people who simply hadn't done the transcendental meditation, but who were otherwise just living normally. This reduction in anxiety was actually comparable to decreases in depression, insomnia, and general psychological distress as well. This chart is a more comprehensive study. It was done a long time ago, but it has been updated and replicated several times. And it looks at all the possible published research on relaxation methods and anxiety and compares them. And it controls for all manner of things like how much time you spend doing it, how much time you spend with the teacher, how long the course was, how much you paid to learn, etc. And you can see something stands out here. Transcendental meditation, again and again, taking all these factors into account, comes out as more effective than all these other forms of relaxation. How could that be so? The simple answer is all of these things here are trying to control something. And transcendental meditation is not trying to control anything. It is completely natural, completely effortless. And we'll talk more of that about that in a moment. I'm going to stop sharing screen now for a moment because I don't know if you're inclined towards scientific research. I know you can have too much of it sometimes, but this is a very, very key finding that really sheds deep light into what transcendental meditation is doing. A major discovery was made in the last 20 years or so only in how the brain works, and it took the scientists by surprise. What they found was, when they were able to measure what was going on in the deep brain using functional MRI, when you're doing nothing, when you're just daydreaming, more of your brain is busy than when you're doing a task. Strange but true. What's going on? It's called the default mode for obvious reasons. Now, the default mode is by definition effortless. It's what you're doing, what happens when you're doing nothing and you're not trying to do anything. The best way to understand the default mode is in terms of digestion. It's mental digestion. The brain, now it's not having to do other things, is digesting all the experience that you've had, trying to sort things out, trying to assimilate, process information, trying to come to terms with things, learning, understanding, incorporating, growing from this, gaining a bigger perspective on life. Now, why is this relevant to meditation? Because when they compared the default mode with different kinds of meditation, they found that it discriminated very effectively between different types. Now, I hope you can see my hands here. If this were the default mode, I could show you charts, but they confuse even me. If this were the default mode, then different forms of meditation would lie in this direction here, which is the direction of doing. Zazen might be right over here because it's very strict discipline and hard work. Vipassana might be maybe here. Mindfulness, well, maybe that's around here because you're not trying to control the mind or intervene in what's happening. You're simply trying to observe and be present. Now, where was transcendental meditation? Take a guess. Here, here. It was actually over here. What does that mean? It means it was facilitating the default mode. It was helping all that mental digestion and assimilation and putting things to rest spontaneously, naturally, effortlessly. Yes? Now, if we want to look briefly at some more research on the brain, I'll share my screen again in just one moment. So here we go. Now, this is looking at the what's happening on the surface of the brain, the conscious cortex of the brain. And we can see that during the normal waking state of consciousness, very few parts of the brain are actually talking with other bits, coordinated. Most of it is uncoordinated, doing different things from the other bits. Close the eyes and you find little pockets of coherent activity, little areas of calm in the brain, but still a lot of disparate activity. This is an actual sample from transcendental meditation, albeit a selected sample to show the end point. Now, what are we looking at here? This is the default mode par excellence, if you like. The whole brain is calm, it's settled, it's opened up. Although you're doing the next thing to nothing in your mind, the brain is actually communicating more than ever. Neurotransmitter turnover is higher than normal. The whole brain is opened up using unused reserves. It is calm. It's not active, but it is quiet and it is functioning as a whole in an orderly manner. It's ready for anything. This is the simplest form of human awareness. Call it transcending if you like. Now, what does that mean? Einstein once said, deeply intuitive person, of course, he once said, I think 99 times and find nothing. I stop, swim in silence, and truth comes to me. Beautiful insight into the creative process. And I think most of us will have experienced that our best ideas come out of nowhere when we're least expecting them. Yeah? This is where they're coming from. What we're doing here on a daily basis is bringing that deep creativity, insightfulness, more and more on tap in our daily life. Now, just as when you are able to free the mind from everything that's occupying it normally, it doesn't just switch off, it actually turns on. The body does exactly the same thing. The body's not like a machine, you turn it off, turn off the engine, and it goes silent, idle, and doesn't do anything. It's the exact opposite. Just like the brain, when the mind transcends, yes, or goes beyond mental activity, albeit maybe briefly, the body is able to get busy readjusting, rebalancing. What's the term? Restoring depleted reserves and so on. So, just by the by, in passing, different kinds of meditation are not all the same. In fact, they're as different as different kinds of medication. Zen meditation shows theta waves showing an internal focus, for example, on the breath. Buddhist loving kindness and compassion shows very high intensity, very high frequency gamma waves, which is when you are working hard, and they are working hard, developing those emotions and controlling and training the mind. Mindfulness is kind of halfway to transcendental meditation. Half the brain is in alpha, which is content-free awareness, but the front of the brain, which is the intellect, is staying vigilant to watch and see what's happening. Transcendental meditation, that also gains deep rest. The whole brain is in a state of deep rest. Now, coming to the body, cortisol is the stress hormone, and hormones are not subject to conscious control, unlike with the help of biofeedback controlling blood pressure or even alpha waves. Now, these people have been doing a formal muscular relaxation exercise for many months. And during that practice, cortisol in the blood does not come down significantly. In people doing transcendental meditation for a couple of months or so, it's coming down highly significantly during the practice. Now, this is important. We need cortisol. It helps us to meet challenges in life. However, it gets stuck too high, and it needs to come back to normal levels to recover and not cause ongoing damage. So, high cortisol ages us too quickly. It predisposes us to degenerative disorders like heart disease and diabetes and so on. But also it makes us progressively more depressed because it depletes serotonin, the feel-good factor in the brain. So this is good news. However, even more interesting than that, to my mind, is that people who have too low a level of cortisol, what happens to them when they learn to meditate? Are they unable to get out of bed in the morning? No. The cortisol level actually comes up. I found this with a dwarf that I taught. We worked with his doctor, needless to say, and his doctor actually told him to start taking fewer pills of cortisol every morning because the system was normalizing. So what does all this mean in summary? What's the bottom line? To me, the bottom line is we're allowing that inner intelligence of nature to restore us to full and proper functioning. Yeah, I hope it makes sense. I didn't learn transcendental meditation to lower my cortisol level or even to get alpha waves. I wanted to feel good. And I think it must be the same for all of us. I'm going to decreased medical costs, controlled study in Canada over many years, longitudinal healthcare costs reduced by 55% over 6 years in general, even more in the older members of the group. Now, this is what's really important to most of us: relationships, behavior, how you feel, how you get on in life. Now, when you meditate with transcendental meditation twice every day, what you're doing in effect is going to a little place inside which feels good, which feels easy, comfortable, relaxed, secure. Now do that every day, morning and evening, and what happens? Even if you don't notice it happening, that inner peace, maybe a little inner happiness, is just growing little by little, and it begins to pervade your life. This inner happiness, that inner peace, the beautiful thing about it is, of course, it is independent of circumstance. You're not dependent on something out there for your happiness. You've got happiness bubbling up. Joie de vivre, the joy of life, is the natural state of being, actually. Now, when I did a master's in health promotion many years ago now, I was fascinated to discover, to learn, that there is something that determines how long you'll live and whether you'll get a serious illness, much more than anything physical, much more than getting drunk every night, smoking 40 cigarettes a day. eating lots of fatty red meat, and doing no exercise. Believe it or not, all of those, put them together, it'll be disastrous. But there's something even more powerful than that in determining our health and longevity. How you feel privately, deep within yourself. You need anonymous questionnaires to find these things out. You might not even share those most intimate feelings with your partner, but they determine everything. It is the #1 health factor. But not only that, it is also a key determinant for success. Management trainers will tell you happiness doesn't necessarily come from success, but happiness is a key determinant or requirement for success. When you're happy, you just do things much more easily. It is the antidote to dependence too, whether we're talking about dependence on alcohol, caffeine, or a relationship or a role. When you're more self-sufficient, when you feel good inside yourself, you don't need something from outside so much. I used to go to a business networking group, and one week the accountant learnt Transcendental meditation with me, and the next week he got up at breakfast and he said to everybody, okay, I learnt with Transcendental meditation with Charles last week, and what have I found? He said, at the end of the week, I found, and I was waiting for it, was he calmer? Was he less anxious? Was he sleeping better? And he said, what I found was that my fridge was still full of beer. He said, I didn't even notice I wasn't coming home every night and taking a couple of cans out. How could that have happened? Only because he felt better in himself. He didn't need it so much. Okay, how you are inside yourself, this just sounds like a truism. It's the secret of easy, rewarding relationships. You can try to have good relationships, but you can only do that. It doesn't really succeed, does it? Many examples I could give you of people learning Transcendental meditation and suddenly other people becoming nicer, smiling at them more, being more friendly towards them. Parents and children suddenly being able to get on and becoming best friends with each other. It actually happened to me and my parents when they eventually learned Transcendental meditation as well. And finally, the world is as we are. If you feel good inside, it's a beautiful world. Yeah, you enjoy things more. Slide. The benefits of Transcendental meditation are spontaneous. This is probably clear from what I've said, but lots of people might claim for lots of things from many different things, but sometimes you're the last one to notice the benefits of TM because they are real, they are natural, and they are spontaneous. Okay, this gentleman, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, is, you might have seen his picture, the gentleman who brought Transcendental meditation to the modern world. Now, Maharishi grew up in, relatively speaking, modern-day India, and he didn't look like this all the time. He looked like you and I, and he went to one of the best universities in India, Allahabad, and he studied physics. And one day he heard of a very highly revered guru who happened to be in the forest near Maharishi's family home. So Maharishi, as a young man, got on his bicycle and pedaled off into the forest to find Guru Dev. And when he got there, they tried to turn him away, but he said, no, I promise I'll just sit there and be quiet. So they let him in, and something very remarkable happened. Maharishi described how just seeing Guru Dev in the semi-darkness, in a moment, he knew that Guru Dev had something that he hadn't seen in anyone else. And that thing he wanted more than anything. Maharishi felt that was the most important thing, and he cancelled everything, and he just hung around Gurudev and made himself useful in any way he could. The reason this is relevant is because Gurudev was one of those very rare souls that comes around every few thousand years. Buddha, Shankara, Christ, Vashishta, whatever, who restore the simple truth of life. And Gurudev turned the understanding of meditation as it prevailed at that time on its head. Meditation had been understood for centuries, really, as concentration, control of the mind, or perhaps contemplating philosophical ideas. Now, Gurudev said, if you are making any effort in your meditation, you are going against your nature. That's obvious, isn't it? If it was your nature, it would just happen by itself. And then he went on, if you're going against your nature, you're going against nature as a whole, nature itself. And nature knows better than you, it knows better than anybody how to bring you to fulfillment and health. So above all else, meditation should be perfectly effortless. Now, Maharishi found this very, very interesting because having a scientific perspective, he thought, you know, this isn't mind control, this isn't a belief system, it's not a philosophy, it's something physical. And he actually got people doing research on this kind of meditation. The first bit of research was actually a British GP who happened to be out there at the time. And he published a letter in the Lancet in the early 60s, reporting the changes in his own breath rate. It was followed by letters in the subsequent issues of the Lancet saying that he would be dead if he hadn't been breathing that much. But of course, he has been proved correct many times since then. And that's how the research started. Now, this is what I call the big picture. Maharishi drew this. It's been tidied up, of course, and elaborated slightly. But basically, on the left here, we have modern science. And on the right, we have what we could call the science of consciousness, or meditation done effectively, transcending. So on the physics, of course, is at the forefront of modern science. Now, this is the macroscopic level here, the everyday level where we have computers and aeroplanes and trees and sofas and human beings. And as we go down the chart, it gets smaller quite quickly. So here we have all the laws and all the components that make all these things work. We have, for example, in our TV, optics and acoustics. There's lots of transistors there. There's a fan to keep it cool, and so on. Go much smaller, and we all know, we eventually find the atom. Break the atom, and you get huge energy coming out. Split the nucleus of the atom, millions of times more energy comes out. And about the same scale here, I'll explain why this is relevant in a minute. About the same scale here, quantum mechanics was developed. And over the decades of last century, what were called the four fundamental forces, gravity, electromagnetism, the nuclear force, and the radioactive force, were gradually, little by little, realized to be the same underneath. And this was a big one here, the grand unification, when they found that the nuclear force was actually the same as electromagnetism and the radioactive force. Similarly, all the many families of subatomic particles that were discovered were found ultimately to be either quarks or leptons, and so on. Today, the forefront of physics is all about superunification, or what Einstein coined the unified field. And he did that when they were still up here. He knew intuitively, we will discover a single substrate that gives rise to all energy and all matter. Now, what's this got to do with meditation? When we meditate effectively, we go beyond the sensory, we go beyond the rational mind and logic and reasoning and maths and language. And we go quietly beyond even those sort of amorphous feelings inside. And we may briefly and possibly not so clearly at first, actually even go beyond self-awareness and just experience consciousness pure. How does that feel? When are you going to experience it? It varies a great deal. It took me months to be sure that I was doing it, but some people do experience it on the first occasion when they come and learn. The simplest state of awareness. All right, now Maharishi insisted these were not simply parallel. These were identical. Pure consciousness is the unified field of physics. It is the inner intelligence of nature at the basis of mind and of matter, both. Now, so what? There are two really big implications here, really big implications. Firstly, as you go down to smaller scales, you get hugely more energy, more power. Similarly, when you meditate and you go deeper, there is huge healing power, insight, creativity, wisdom, understanding, which is all your own. It's not something you've gained from outside. It's realizations from within yourself. And when you do this regularly, meditating and coming out into your daily activities, all those qualities come out into everyday life. So higher consciousness develops, life becomes easier. You might master what you're doing. Even in peak performance, you will be completely relaxed and effortless and blissful. You will just love what you're doing and do it well and nourish all those around you by doing it. The second major implication is everything below this level here is interconnected with everything else. You can't separate them. They're just waves on fields, like radio waves in the electromagnetic field that you can't see, but it's everywhere in infinite space. When you meditate and you transcend and you're going deeper within yourself and experiencing peace within yourself, albeit unknowingly, you are radiating an effect of peace, a little bit of peace and harmony into your social environment through the collective consciousness. There is excellent research which endorses this. It's a whole other subject which we could go into at some point. But I thought you'd like to get that big picture. It's not just a simple stress management technique, not even really an aid to creativity. It's actually really developing your full potential, finding your real self. The religiously inclined might say, discovering the divine within. Okay, now you have been absolutely patient with me, and now you want to know, come on, how do you do it? Right. I don't know if any of you have been diving in the ocean at any time, snorkeling or scuba diving, but you may, if you have, you may relate to this major discovery that I made when I was 7. I used to live in Kenya, and we used to go down to the beach at Mombasa for our annual holidays, and I'd always get knocked over by these huge waves coming in from the Indian Ocean. When I was 7, I had achieved my ambition, not only to be able to swim competently on the surface, but actually in a swimming pool up in Nairobi to swim underwater. And next time I was on the beach, I was a big boy now, and I was wading out, resisting the waves and pushing my way through, managing to get over waves that were too high to stand before they would crash on me. When suddenly there was a huge wave and I couldn't get over it in time before it would crash. And I knew from painful past experience, it was going to smash me into the beach and it was going to be really painful. And on impulse, I just dived down and I swam right down to the sand, holding my breath for as long as I could, waiting for the crash. And guess what happened? It never came. In fact, when I couldn't hold my breath any longer, I came up half expecting that it had stopped and it was waiting for me. But of course, it had gone right up the beach and the backwash was coming down. I had not felt a thing. Now, the mind is exactly like this. Yes, on the surface, the mind, this is rather extreme, this picture that I've made here, but it's constantly moving. Yeah. From the moment we wake up in the morning to the moment we fall asleep at night, the mind is thinking, and it's been doing that all our life. Yeah. Even if you're successful and you're happy, it can be quite tiresome. I just want a bit of peace. And you might think, well, I'll try and stop these things and whatever. But just like in the ocean, you can't stop those waves. But if you were able to dive beneath, as you would if you were scuba diving, going back over the back of the dive boat, sinking down with your weight belt, turning around, you'd find on the surface, the dive boat was still being tossed around, but down here, it was peaceful. So the deeper we go in the mind, in our consciousness, the more quiet it is. We don't have to resist or control or concentrate. Just by relaxing, freeing the mind and letting it settle, there is more peace down here. And it's not just peace. In a very quiet way, there is much more power and intelligence down here. Because when you come back up to the surface, everything is easier. Okay, slight aside here. Some people at this point say, oh yeah, there can be some really big currents down there. There can even be sharks for some people. Yeah, okay, trauma. But no trauma is as powerful as that inner intelligence of nature. And I've taught people with post-traumatic stress, severe post-traumatic stress, and it dissolves. It gives rise to such relief. All right, so how do we do that? Just like the waves in the ocean, waves in the ocean are a circular pattern of pressure waves. It's not a body of water moving. A cork will just move up and down. Yeah? So this circular pattern of activity is just like what's going on in the mind, because the mind thinks about something and it thinks about it again and it thinks about it again over and over. It's a vicious cycle. All we have to do is suspend the mind, free the mind, even for a moment, from that vicious cycle. And that's all we have to do. Everything else happens automatically. Free the mind, and it'll be able to see where it really needs and wants to go, and it'll be able to go there. So how do we suspend the mind? How do we free the mind from the ongoing activity? If we were to simply concentrate, whether it be on a mantra or a visualization or our breath or anything else, we would be using force to hold the mind still. We are resisting the waves. So it gives temporary respite, but it actually, through its activity, prevents the transcending process. Similarly, if we contemplate philosophy, if we pray, if we study psychology and neuro-linguistic programming, and we learn all kinds of skills to make life more effective, all wonderful, is becoming a stronger swimmer, but it prevents the transcending process because they are, in their nature, active. Now, you might have heard how transcendental meditation works. Many people have heard that it uses what we call a mantra. What is a mantra? What do you understand by the word mantra? Most people, East and West actually, understand mantra as a word or a phrase that is repeated persistently. So if you repeat it persistently and over, little by little, you are displacing the unwanted thoughts and you end up just with the mantra. And if that's what you want, fine, but it doesn't help you to transcend, to let go and get that very special, profound rest. So mantras are in fact not something that you concentrate on. That has been the misunderstanding, and it has been misused like that for centuries. Mantras are in fact, that's a very bold statement, but it's absolutely true. Mantras are in fact special sounds. Now, sounds resonate with the nervous system in different ways. You can measure it, but you don't have to, because in the case of music, it's completely obvious. There's happy music and sad music and stimulating music and sleepy music, and that's regardless of culture. Anywhere you take that in the world, that would have that effect on people. Consonants and vowels are similar. Ah, grr, mm. They're all associated with very, very different feelings, and they come spontaneously when you, aha, when you get a solution, or oh, I'm in pain, grr, whatever. Yeah. So mantras have been handed down over the centuries, over the millennia, by people who had been exquisitely sensitive to the effects of sound on consciousness. So when you learn transcendental meditation, you are given a few syllables, a meaningless word, or call it a mantra if you like. It has soothing and healthy properties, resonant properties. Now that's only half the story, because even if you had the best sound in the world and you concentrated on it, you wouldn't be allowing the mind to enjoy those resonant properties of the sound. So you get a mantra, but you also learn how to use the mantra without effort. Yes? Now you might think, oh, I'll go home and do that. It'll be very difficult. You'll be trying really hard not to try. You'll be watching yourself very, very closely to make sure that you're perfectly innocent. When you learn transcendental meditation with a qualified teacher, we give you instructions and we lead you through it, and it is plain sailing. Okay, here we are. We're starting off with a mantra on the surface, which is where we are at first. This is the mantra. Now, every thought, every signal from inside the body has started off somewhere very quietly inside. And we don't even notice it or hear it until it crosses the threshold of consciousness. What we're doing with transcendental meditation is allowing that threshold to lower. Because when we think a meaningless sound, which is suitable, without effort, the mind remains alert, because you're not doing nothing, you're attending to something. But at the same time, it is innocent, because it's not being stimulated into meaningful thought. It's not being reminded of all kinds of things. The mind is just floating, as it were, on this meaningless sound. When the mind is alert yet innocent, it is freed from all that was going on before. And before you know it, you're beginning to experience thought at quieter, softer, vaguer, subtler, less defined states, vaguer, and it might fade away completely when the mind transcends, possibly just fleetingly. And these last few steps might not be absolutely clear if we're not used to being at that quieter level. But this is what is happening nevertheless. And this is where the benefit comes from and how transcendental meditation works. So I hope that makes sense. Probably a little different to your understanding of meditation in general. I hope so.